honor to be with us to see that we have quite a number of people who have joined us today. I have actually seen quite some familiar names, and I've also noted that we have quite a big group that is joining us outside this country. So we are thankful that we'll be able to do this. So as Ken has introduced us as Pinebridge, my name is Samuel Kibaara, Director and Partner at Pinebridge. We are about risk business continuity and lately doing a lot of strategic refocusing due to the disruption. And today we will be exploring yet another topic. Last time we talked about reviewing our risk management frameworks. And these are just some ways to give some snapshots of what perhaps we in the market do need, or we who are in this profession need to be able to move forward. So today we are going to be looking at a topic that we titled From Recovery to Resilience, and it is very, very interesting that even as I'll be sharing within the presentation, that in just this week, we actually did have the newspaper giving a title that is very similar, and we'll see that in the next slide. But what we are talking about today is actually saying that we are moving. We want to be able to provide some thought leadership in terms of what is the ERM enterprise risk management perspective towards recovery, from recovery to resilience. Because as I mentioned last time, one of the things that is likely to be a keyword going forward is business resilience. How resilient is your organization or your business? How well can you be able to withstand pressure? You know, when we talk about stress testing for banks and for organizations, how well can you withstand pressure? And in this case, we are looking at COVID, the global pandemic that has come, and many organizations are looking at how do we then bounce back. So like I said, it was very interesting. On Monday, the nation actually had a pullout inside that said from resilience to recovery. Note ours is from recovery to resilience, and theirs is from resilience to recovery. And I thought perhaps I need to just spend 1 or 2 minutes on that. Because it may be confusing which one comes before the other. Why are we talking about resilience to recovery, and yet for us we are saying recovery to resilience? So basically, when I went in a bit of just trying to research and see what this was about, I think the government was trying to bring out the issue of the fact that we have actually been resilient. If you look at how the impact of COVID has been in the rest of the world, we can say Africa and perhaps even Kenya, to be specific, have been resilient, and they have not been hit as hard as perhaps it was anticipated earlier. So for that reason, we are saying that now, since we have exhibited some resilience, that this COVID-19 is not hitting us as much as we were, perhaps we need to start recovering. And the recovering we are talking about here is economic, because we may have exhibited some resilience from a health perspective, but more importantly, we need to start recovering from a point of the economic and livelihood perspective. So this article was more to do with we have exhibited resilience in terms of the impact of COVID to people and to the healthcare systems. And now we need to move on to the towards the recovery of the livelihoods and the economy. And so I then went a little bit ahead and said, we need to define why are we even having the webinar. And for us, we want to, enable the risk professionals and participants to be able to start picking the lessons that have been during this season, and to allow us to move forward and build resilience for our organization. And also to show the place of enterprise risk management agenda in helping organizations move forward following this disruption. So what we are saying is that we want to be able to we as the ERM risk and audit and those people who are involved in this profession, we need to start picking from where we are so that we can actually also occupy the right place in terms of the organization's agenda. And so I still go back to the quote by Charles Darwin that we had actually last time. We say that it is
Sam, unapotea.
not the strongest of the species
Sam.
to survive, nor the most Hello?
I can hear you now, Sam.
We can hear you. You can hear, you can hear me.
Yeah.
All right, sorry about that. So as we were saying that resilience is about coming back following a disruption and adapting to the change. So this is still relevant to us today. And so we want to move on and ask ourselves just exactly what is resilience? What exactly is this resilience we are talking about? Now, the word resilience actually comes from a Latin word resare, which means springing back or even bouncing back. And if you look at even the Oxford Dictionary, it talks about the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, and not just bouncing back, but also adapting to the new environment. And that's where the word by Charles Darwin becomes very, very critical. And I think this is an important time to really talk about what we have just gone through. What we have just gone through. It's important for us to see what can we do, how can we bounce back, how can we be relevant in the season. Now, this capacity can be at either individual, organizational, community, or even at country level. We can say this is a resilient individual, this is a resilient organization, this is a resilient community, or even the country is resilient. So it can be at any level. But for today, we are actually specializing ourselves in considering the organizational level so that we can help move this conversation on how exactly can we become a resilient organization. Now, just some bit of outlook, because I believe that it is important to look ahead what is going to happen or what is likely to happen, and then looking back using the side mirror. And I like this motor vehicle example as always, where we say that we use small mirrors to look at what is behind, but we use the big mirror, which is the windscreen of a vehicle, to see what is in front. So we need a bigger view of what is ahead. Now, I talk about something that McKinsey and company refer to as herd immunity. This is a medical term. And now herd immunity talks about that point where we, like now, there's a lot of conversation, especially in East Africa, about the reveling of the curve. That the curve, in fact, the head of state on Monday talked about that the curve has actually reveled. So the question that we want to talk about is that in the globally, the experts have been looking at when are we going to achieve herd immunity. So this means that we want to achieve a point where we become immune to this COVID, such that the disease cannot be passed from one person to the other, and so the whole community becomes covered. Now, this may come as a result of either having a vaccine, and also the fact as to whether the populations will be ready to actually achieve these vaccines. And the issue is...
Could you share your screen?
Sorry, you can't. Sorry about... oh, I guess when I was kicked out, I was the screen was not... Okay, there it is.
Thank you.
So thanks, Ken, for that support. So this herd immunity, we are saying that from the outlook, it is most likely going to be achieved in the third or fourth quarter of 2021. So we are talking about towards end of next year. However, if the vaccine becomes acceptable quickly to the population, then there is likelihood that this could be achieved even as early as the first or second quarter of 2021. So what we are saying is that, yes, we still have a situation. We don't have the vaccine trials in various parts of the world, but we still are at a space where we do not, we cannot confirm that we had that, but there's a lot of hope. And so this immunity and us getting to a point where we are not so worried about infections and all that is likely to come towards the third, fourth quarter. And if that's the case, then the question then starts to become, how is our environment going to look like before then? How is our organization? And so every organization has its own story to tell. For some, it has been total disruption, and only a rebuild will assist. So what we are saying is that for some business processes, some strategies, I mean, people may need to come back all over again. You have had some businesses closing up. I know of certain beauty shops in town, in the cities, in the big cities that have actually closed up. There are some schools that have not, will not even be able to come back, even though we open our schools. And for others, there has been a moderate disruption, so to speak. And when we talk about moderate disruption, that there are some aspects that will require some drastic change while others will remain. For example, some government agencies got to a place where they were required to offer their services online. And so for the last 6 months, for the last 7 months, they have been offering certain services that they never offered online using that portal. So it means that it may not be possible to now say again, because COVID has gone, let's go back to manual. So it means there will be some drastic changes, although others will remain. So moderate disruption. Yet there are others that this pandemic was just a passing crowd. So they hibernated and quickly resurfaced, and the business as usual. So there is minimal disruption. Maybe they are holding some meetings online. Quite some, a few of the government agencies are here. You know, they just went and then they have come back. So there are a few changes here, maybe the sitting space for people, but everything else is business as usual. And then we have others that have just, the pandemic has just brought a sudden, unexpected opportunity. So it has really opened doors for exponential growth, and regrouping is needed to exploit the opportunity. So this is much more the opposite, the other extreme of number one. Number one is facing extinction if they don't change. Number four is facing exponential growth, and the other two are in between. And so we want to actually ask ourselves, if this is the scenario, then we need to say, how then have we reacted? And perhaps this is a good space to actually do our poll and ask ourselves, where are you as an organization? Where are you? The organization that you represent, where are you? And I want us actually to do a poll, and the poll will just be 4 questions. And I want you to answer that, and then we can use that even as we progress with the conversation. So I think I'll stop the share so that we can get the poll. Shira, do we need to stop sharing, or do we keep it there?
We can keep it there for the moment.
Okay, then let's take the poll. Let as many of us participate. It's only 4 questions, so it will take you just a few seconds. Click on your answer, and then we move on. It's now on your screen, so take it. So the first question is on what we have just talked about. The second question is really asking about what's the level of your ERM maturity. For some, they don't have, they have not established it in an organized way yet. For others, they have the ERM, perhaps they even have it, but it has not been implemented. They have the policies, they have the documentation, but it's not really embedded. For others, they have advanced, it has been integrated in some processes. So it is normal, perhaps there's a project you can see, whatever. And for others, it's really embedded and it is actually considered when they are doing their decision making. That's very few organizations I would expect. And then the third question is, to what extent do you feel your organization responded well to the disruption? So that again, let's see, how did you feel you responded? If were you disrupted? How did you quickly, if it is opportunities, have you taken them? And then the fourth last question is, to what extent do you feel your organization processes will bounce back after the pandemic? So that is, will all the processes just come back? All? Is it that almost all? That's just a few changes, then about half, and then significant changes. So those are 4 questions that will form some bit of a basis in terms of how we have this conversation. So I do hope that as many of us have been able to participate, so that we can use the information that we get in those questions to be able to share even as we go forward. So allow me to continue, and moving on now. We are saying that resilient organizations are those ones that don't stay down after disruption or a difficult phase, but instead bounce back and quickly acknowledge the new environment, adapt to it, and pick lessons learned for continuous improvement into the future. So what we are saying, and what the end game for us is today, is that how can we use this season to even make our organizations better? That's the conversation we are having today. Now, when we talk about the resilience framework, it can mean many things. As you can see there is about business continuity. We can talk about crisis management and communication. Critical environments, how did we secure that? How are we able to secure that? How is your financial health? has the financial health of your organizations been impacted, especially for those in business? What Ken was sharing at the start is exactly that. Human resource management. How many people have you been able to transit into working from home or working remotely? And how is the welfare of the staff being looked into? ICT continuity, because now you have a lot of VPN happening and all that. How is that? Incident response. Should there be incidents? For example, there are some organizations represented here that reported a case and they had to close up. How did we respond to that incident? Information security. How do we secure our information even now that we have to even carry information from our offices to others? Legal audit and compliance. There are certain things that will need a test of compliance now that things are different. What about the overall organization behavior? And then risk management. And more importantly, we will not leave this supply chain resilience behind, because it's an important part when we talk about resilience. And so these are all things, but we want to simplify that by looking at the place of business resilience in the whole structure and setup of our organization. So we start off with the strategic goals and objectives. That's the overall, that's what we are looking at. Every organization has strategic goals and objectives. And this is the same place where we start when we are doing our risk assessments. This is the same place where we start when we are doing our business continuity, business impact analysis. It's the same place we start when we are trying to do our performance management. It's the same. This is the start of everything. So it's a good space to go back and find out what are we there? Why do we exist here? Is it to make profit? Is it to gain growth? Is it to offer a certain service, especially for those in the public sector? And so business resilience or organization resilience is that capacity that you develop to the extent that whatever happens within or without, you will continue in business. So it has a lot to do with your business continuity. It has a lot to do with your key risks. It has a lot to do with how strong have you made your supply chain and other resources possible. How often are you doing business impact analysis? Because this is a moving target. You want to be sure that as everything is happening, you want to be sure what are the scenarios? What are the scenarios? What are our business continuity and strategy and plans? Who among our suppliers could make us stop business? And sometimes even service offering organizations imagine that they do not have suppliers. Perhaps during this time, you may need to go and reevaluate our suppliers, because our internet service providers have become key suppliers. They may not have been key suppliers earlier, but now they are key suppliers because a lot of people are needing to connect to our networks from out there. And then you need to always have your eye on the key business risks. What are the risks that could make us not achieve our strategic goals and our objectives? So you can see that this resilience we are talking about is a sum total of many things that you have actually to do to ensure that you can actually continue to be in business. It's more of a continuity. It's continuity, it's recovery, it's viability. And so we want then to look at the total risk assessment and profiling. And that's why when we are looking at the key corporate risks, we are saying, were the key corporate risks that we used to have before COVID still the same key risks now? Is there another risk that has joined the top 5 or the top 10? Is there something that we now will be very difficult to achieve among our strategic goals and objectives because we are experiencing COVID, the pandemic, the global pandemic? And so these are things, the 4 things that you can see around here, these are things that we need to enhance every time. And then enterprise risk management becomes a good foundation for you now to be able to achieve your strategic goals within a business resilient environment, so that even if something comes like the pandemic, you still can achieve your strategic goals because you have good business continuity plans and strategies. You always do your business impact analysis. Your suppliers and supply chain is well taken care of. Your resource availability in terms of you have reserves that could take you for a few times. And you know what your key business risks are. And this is something that even at individual level, you look at what are the key issues that could make you not be comfortable. Perhaps it's having your rent, is having your day-to-day usage, it's having a job. Those are the key personal risks. Who are your suppliers? That's the people you rely on. That is, if you are to work from home, you need your internet supplier who is reliable. If you are you need food, you need healthcare, you need all those are suppliers. Business continuity strategies. What is it that you will do to continue enjoying the same lifestyle that you have always done? And what are the things that could impact you? So you do that total risk assessment and profiling so that you are always on top of things when things are happening. So you do an enterprise risk management even for at an individual level when you know what your strategy and what your objective goals and objectives are. And so how does the organization resilience framework work? Because this is actually a whole framework, and it has three real components that build what we call the organizational resilience. And so what we are actually saying in this, and that's why now I bring down back to the topic, we are saying we have been in a space where businesses, there were a lot of lockdowns, there were a lot of business impact. Now people are recovering. But as we recover, we want to be able to look back and see what is it that we can pick from this period and be able to build a resilient organization. So the first thing we want to look at is leadership and strategy. This is an important. Do we still have a shared vision? Have people been disrupted to an extent that they have become so consumed with, are we going to keep our jobs, that they no longer have a shared vision? Do we understand the context? What has changed? And do we have effective leaders? Is our management team looking in the right direction? So that's leadership and strategy. And that is something that we may want, if you're talking about recovery, this is something that we may need to go back to. And this is what I said, that one of the things that have been keeping us busy is just taking management through reevaluation of what is in their strategic plan. Could they perhaps need to change now that there has been a disruption? Not only because there has been a cessation of working, but also because there are certain changes that have taken even to our consumers. So what can we do? So do we have effective leaders for that? So that's the first bit. So the second bit is actually coming, and are we prepared? How is our preparedness in terms of managing risk? How are we managing the risks that come? Do we have resources available to be able to take us to a space where we are able to navigate our recovery? So that is something that is important. What are the risks? What are the risks during the recovery phase? And how are we going to manage the changes that come with the first two? That is because we don't have enough availability of resource. We may have to keep people on half pay for another 3 months as we manage the risk of liquidity and cash flow within our business. And we hope that our people will manage the change of reduced income, and their motivation and their productivity will not be impacted. That's what the preparedness and managing risk is talking about within a resilient framework perspective. And then the last one is culture and behaviors. You see, some organizations' culture has been torn down because what was keeping the culture together is actually being together in the office. Now that half of the people have actually been working out of the office, can we still retain a healthy culture? Are people sharing information, or is it because that there are some people now who are working from home they get to know some important information about the organization 1 week later, simply because they were not in the office. Because we tended to use verbal communication and things like that there before. How are our cultures and behavior within the organization? What is different? What do we need to do more? Are we going to share information more? Are we going to use use emails much more, use social media much more, even for our internal communications? Are there some things we need to change in our communication strategy and policy to ensure that we can still be able to make sure that everyone is having the same information? And the aim of all this is to build organization resilience, is to make us adaptive, aware, collaborative, committed, creative, all those things, prepared, innovative, inclusive, flexible, effective, diverse, and aiding us into being reflective, resourceful, respected, responsive, robust. Those are all things that we can use to describe a resilient organization. And so those 3 key things, that is leadership and strategy, we need to, and that's a way you can start the conversation. And then how prepared are we in terms of managing the risks, even the emerging ones? And how are our cultures and behaviors, and what do we need to perhaps change to ensure that we can still continue being resilient and adaptive into the new, the next normal? And so that is how that framework works. And so how then, as I conclude this, do we optimize the recovery mode to build organization resilience? Yes, we have just talked about the way that this thing works, but we want to move one step. And I'll share with you 5 things that we can do that will help us to optimize the recovery mode so that we can build organization resilience. The first thing, and this can actually be used even at an individual level, change the narrative. There has been a lot of negative narrative, and perhaps understandably so. There are organizations that have lost people. There are organizations whose business has just been seriously impacted, as we saw even in our poll. And I'll be asking Sheila to share to her screen just to show us what the polls were shortly after I finish. But then we are saying change this narrative. And that's where leadership and strategy comes in. The first part we looked at, leadership and strategy. You need to change the narrative. So you need to assess your strategy and look at what is it for us? How can we use the new circumstance? So any organization across the world needs to have this session. It could be a 1-hour session. It could be a half-day session where we ask, how do we change this narrative? Stop talking about the negative things of people, death, health, livelihoods, reduced revenues, and start talking about new opportunities, and make sure that this is the language within our organization. The second thing is we need to face the scenario. And this we can only do by doing business impact analysis, look at the external environment, note what behaviors our customers have changed within our customers, and work out some what if scenarios. So the question is, what if our customers never come back? What if our staff are not able to come to work from the office? What if we are not able to get enough money from Treasury? What if? All those what if scenarios that are important to us, preferably using analytics and scenario building to help us face this scenario. And then assess if there are some wins. It's not all bad. Like we asked the question, or are there some things that we did well? Did you feel the organization responded well? Perhaps some people have said yes. So pick those wins from a risk management or even business continuity processes. Are there some wins that we want to build on? Start talking about them. Use them to change the narrative and to face the scenario, so that those wins, even if they are small, so that you may be surprised that even within the organization, some people don't even realize that there were some wins. That even being alive today, even opening your doors today could be a win. What has made you get that win? It may be important to interrogate that situation so that you can see what do you need to change. Of course, number 4 is look back at the disruptive period and see if there are things the organization could have done better. Be objective and build on positives while improving the downside. So this could actually be a good space where we say, hey guys, I think this has taught us something. It is important for us to improve our ERM processes. It is important for us to be assessing our suppliers every now and going forward. It is important for us to improve our financial management aspects, especially on having some reserves that could help us survive for some period. We are dealing with what if, just in case something happens, how well are we going to respond in the future? And so since this has been arrived, since everyone has been disrupted, this is a free lesson for all organizations on what we did and could be. So we are asking that you be objective. Don't, like I find when people are reporting, they always like to report it's very positive. Look at the things you could have done better and be honest about it. And then lastly, move forward with a plan. Don't just say, okay, we have noted what we could have done better, and we are moving on without a plan. We need an immediate plan. What are we going to do in the immediate? People are not going to come back to the office. We don't have enough workspace to, to design good physical distances for all our employees. So what do we do in the immediate? What do we then do in the medium term? Perhaps we might request that we establish an office and move some people to another location, maybe our branch, maybe another location. And then long-term strategy is that our customers will no longer want to come to our office. So we need to change and look at technology and enhance where we can use technology to serve and to offer our services. So those are the 5 things. Change the narrative, face the scenario, assess if there are some wins, look back and be objective, and then move forward with a plan. That's how we can take advantage of this recovery period that we have today to be able to start moving towards resilience. And looking here, we are saying that by doing that, we'll actually be enhancing our adaptability, we'll be enhancing our flexibility, and we'll be becoming a learning organization. I need to warn you here that most of the people say our organization is a learning organization, but they don't interrogate to say, what have we learned in the last few periods? So I think that's what we are talking about today. That for us, why we talked about recovery to resilience is we are talking about it from what have you learned from this disruptive period? What can we use even as individuals? Perhaps you have learned that it is not good to always rely on one income as a family or only on a salary. We need multiple incomes just in case. Maybe that's what you have learned. What are you going to do about it? Maybe for you, you have not been affected. So you're looking at what are the things I could have done. I am happy I started these 2 alternative sources of income, and they have helped us. Maybe it's the organization. We are happy we had already started the journey of automating our processes in our service provision, that we only now had to fast track to be able to offer our services. So that's our conversation today. And I want to just say that as we think about this, and this is a conversation that we can, this, as I said, is just a snapshot. As you can see, is just to help us to see exactly what you can do during this recovery, going into a period of building resilience. Because what we want, like we said, is we need to build business resilience going forward. So allow me to end my conversation there. And I want to ask perhaps Shira, are the results ready? Are you able to share?
Yes.
So that we can have a quick, can I stop share, then you can share?
Okay.
So that we can see what exactly happens. What exactly, actually, the polls are there. Actually, you can just go right ahead. You don't, she doesn't even need to share, right? You, oh, she's sharing, and you can actually click from down there. So let's look at what we said. 50% of the people have actually said that they face moderate disruption. Now, remember, moderate disruption, we said that there are certain processes that they may need to rethink. So that's a good place to start a conversation. A good percentage also said minimal disruption, they hibernated and come back, but only 8% are saying they have seen an unexpected opportunity. So perhaps we need to enhance ourselves on that space. There are opportunities within this disruption. We perhaps need to look at that. Then we are saying, what is the level of ERM maturity in our organizations? Now, as you can see, quite a number of organizations have at normal. So this is good. It shows that there has been a lot of uptake of risk management, and so we are not at a bad place when we look at how does the ERM framework. We saw the foundation is enterprise risk management. So it is very easy then for us, for the risk professionals here, to use the process of enterprise risk management to start the conversation of how can we then become resilient organizations. And I'm happy to see that there are a few organizations that have embedded ERM into their decision making. To what extent do you feel your organization responded well? As you can see, not too well, about 8% of us, moderately well. So you can see that there is still a lot that we can do. So if we did moderately well, it means that there is a space that we can actually be able to advise, that it offers some advisory from a risk management perspective, that this, and you could even do a paper to management, you could do a paper to the board to actually say how can we as a learning organization build from the recovery from COVID-19 pandemic towards becoming more resilient. And you can actually make it a paper that is discussed even at a strategic level. And I'm happy that between very well and extremely well, we have almost 39%, that's about 40%. So we still have hope. There are good things happening. So things have not been groomed for everyone. So, and I do hope that the ones who are saying extremely well or very well are not the qual, the EABLs, with the home deliveries and all that, now that people are at home, and they could do some of these things from there. And lastly, the question was, to what extent do you feel your organizational processes will bounce back after the pandemic? So as you can say, there will be a few changes. Most people feel there will be a few changes. About half, 22%, that's about a quarter of us feel that almost half of their processes. So what is our place in leading and guiding that process? That is where risk management will gain its relevance. Significant changes. Some 8% feel they might need quite some serious change. So these are guys who may have to discard a strategic plan or significantly alter what the milestones for their strategy, as it were, because it has been significantly disrupted. So as you can see, our conversation then has found a home, even before we did this poll. That when you gave us feedback last time, we thought this would be the topic that actually fits well. And there will be many more topics that come forward. So I want to stop there so that we can move to question and answer. But that as you can see, is a conversation. So I want to quickly move to the questions. Nganga Kiguru says, we have, or Ken, do you want to read these questions? Then I can prepare for the...
Yeah, I can read the questions out. First question was from Nganga, and he's saying, we have organizations that establish risk management strategies. What is your comment regarding our country as a unit towards risk management? Do we in any way have a national risk register as a country?
Okay.
You want me to read all of them, or you want to answer one? There are around 4 questions.
Read all the questions so that we are able to even open it up. Perhaps maybe, I don't know whether they, but let people be able to put your questions here, there. So go ahead.
Okay. Amos Kilonzi has 2 questions. What are some of the tools you would recommend in continuously carrying out business impact assessment, the moving target that changes quickly in this era of COVID-19? Right? And then you have Joanne Kireka, who is asking, with the kind of change and disruption happening, is it still advisable to rely on documentation? The flexibility and adaptability called for mostly renders what is documented obsolete. Okay, so I think she's saying, why are we still using documents? You know, we should probably go soft on everything. Yeah? And then the last question by Amos is, how do you win management without analytical tools or analytic tools to calculate the effects? Yeah, so those are some of the questions that we are getting here.
Okay, they're not many, so I could quickly answer these questions. In regard to country risk assessment and country risk register, indeed, this is something that we need to have. But unfortunately, we have not reached there. Countries like the UK take public risk management and public risk assessment quite seriously, but in Kenya, we have not reached there. And how you actually note that we are not doing effective risk assessment is just even by how the decisions, look at the education sector, how the education sector has responded. We have ended up looking, in fact, Ministry of Education used to, in terms of rating, before COVID, it was rated high. At this point, I'm not too sure that it is being rated very high. It is actually ending up looking like it's very directionless. And that's what disruptions do. And if you're not careful, even with your communication strategy, you're not careful with an overall picture of what are the risks, that's where you end. So that's about David. If I move on to Joanne's question, I mean, is it still advisable to rely on documentation? Now, this is a very interesting question, because last time when we were talking about reviewing risk management frameworks, there has been, for some of those policies that we have, you know, some of the things like risk assessments were assumed that people will come together, meet together, brainstorm. That is not even possible right now. So you would need to change very fast for you to be able to be relevant. So what I would say is that for some of those things, and we have there, I would actually commend the government. The government, especially in terms of when this COVID was happening, it actually issued 2 circulars on how these things were to be done. The first one was not so detailed, and the second one was pretty detailed. They said how the board meetings would be done during this time. They actually gave direction on how that would be done. And I think those are the kind of things that we can do, that regardless of the policies, this is where, remember the 3 things in terms of a resilient organization. The first one is leadership and strategy. So leadership takes over and issues a communication. issues a communication that allows us to actually be able to now have a guidance for this period that allows us flexibility and adaptability so that we are not, it gives us time now to even revise that which is in our policies, our documentation. But it also suffices to do a quick run through to know which of our policies and documentation have been severely or significantly altered that they would need to be changed. So that's the answer to Joan. In terms of Amos has asked two questions. He has asked about the tools that you'd recommend in carrying out BIAs, and how do you win management without analytic tools to calculate the effects. Now, when we do our course, the fundamentals of risk management, there is a tool that I've actually been using with some of the organizations, which is called the extended enterprise, where we are looking at the organization not from within, but also from without, so that we are able to see what is the extended enterprise about. Yes, we have our core mandate, but what is the extended enterprise? This has to do with the external environment, right, from governments and all that, because like you are rightly putting it, it's a moving target that changes quickly with COVID-19. We have unlimited data on COVID. We don't know what tomorrow holds. So that may make us very, we may be at a point where we don't know what tomorrow, we don't know whether schools will be open tomorrow or not. They had said that the candidates will be back on 5th. Now we don't know. And this is, we are already on 30th. So it is 5 days to come, but we don't know. So one of the things is actually always looking at the extended enterprise and seeing what are the moving cogs. What are the moving cogs? One of the moving cogs is the external environment, which is government directive. So we need to be able to be at a place where our organization is so agile that if tomorrow we are told schools will be opening, then we will quickly analyze and see how does that impact us as an organization. Now, the era we are getting into is an era that it will become very difficult for any organization to progress, even in decision making, without data analytics. And I would really recommend, I think I don't know whether my friend Jacob is in this webinar, and he's part of the team that offers data analytics solutions. And you'll be amazed that we need to start small. We need to start small, and starting small may mean that we start with those things that the management is keen about. We start with those things. Perhaps it is just about how many customers visit us on a daily basis. Perhaps it's just telling us that it seems that our office on Tuesdays receives most visitors. Maybe there are some services. Maybe people need to come and do something. Maybe people need to get to a space where their your services are sought on Tuesdays and Thursdays mostly. And there is no major explanation. But when you look at your data, you can see that unlike Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, on Tuesday and Thursday are the days with heaviest. So it will guide your decision in the sense of that you want on those 2 days, you have more people looking at what exactly needs to be done. So without analytic tools, then you would have to rely on things like how convincing can you be, which is a difficult thing. How convincing can you be to management? And now when it is about convincing, then people look behind you. They ask, Sam Kibaara, does he have the moral authority to be talking about this? How has he managed his own life? So without analytic tools, sometimes it becomes very difficult to talk to management. And I would recommend that organizations start using data, because the era we are headed in terms of artificial intelligence requires us to actually do data analytics for us to make decisions. It is going to be so critical. So let's start small. And we in risk and when we are creating a risk tolerance and a risk appetite framework, then the issue is we need to get to a place where we have analytic tools. We need to have measurables. Without measurables, will almost be impossible. Even in the qualitatives, you cannot establish a risk management appetite or tolerance without having data analytics and measurables. So that's what I would say, and I hope I have answered the questions. I saw some other few questions from that were sent earlier, but I think some of those I have actually been able to tackle them in the presentation. So
there's one here. If I could.
Yes, please.
I know time is gone, but a very quick one from Patrick Kurui. He's asking, the current COVID-19 pandemic has challenged institutions on how to recover, maintain, and proceed with their operations. But going forward, what should organizations focus on to avert crisis situations or scenarios? One, in those who already have risk management frameworks and BCP frameworks, and those that don't have risk management frameworks. What do you think organizations should do? And I think you've touched on it during the presentation, but maybe you could just highlight.
Actually, I had seen Kirui's question, and so that was saying that even as I shared the 5 things, if you assess using the 5 things where we are saying change the narrative and so on and so forth, then what we are saying is that we need to actually, if you find that you don't have the frameworks, you don't have any policies, this is the best time to establish them. If you already have them, as Joanne had asked, and some areas have been rendered obsolete, this is the time to review them. So I think I touched on that. I think there's much more, but I know Patrick, I can pick it up with Patrick. I know I'm in contact with him, but good question. But we can use the 5 questions that we have offered to even start the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam, for that wonderful presentation, getting some good feedback from the participants. I think I would sum it up by saying what Winston Churchill said during the World War. He said, "Never let a good crisis go waste." I think this is the essence of what we are trying to say here. That we have been in a crisis, yes, but why let it go to waste? Let's make good use of it and bounce back in a better way. So I think we will close the webinar unless there is something else that needed to be added. Sam, do you want to say anything? Mwanaheri, I don't know if she's around.
Let Mwanaheri say hello, then I can close.
All right.
Mwanaheri?
Hi everyone. I don't have to say. Thank you for the interesting webinar. I think my takeaway from this was when Sam said we always say that we've learned something, but we never take stock of what we've learned. So as we leave, perhaps we can go back and see what have we learned from all of this and what are we going to do next. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. So we want to keep it to our time. It's 5 minutes after, and we started 5 minutes earlier. Thank you, those who joined us from outside the country. I've seen people from Afghanistan, people from Rwanda, Uganda. Thank you all. Thank you, even those who we are here in Nairobi and Kenya together. Jacob, yes, thank you for confirming you are around, and I see many friends, many contacts. Thank you for joining us. We will be doing another one in the month of October. We'll endeavor to let you know when. And just let's continue in this conversation so that we can actually have them. If you want us to do these conversations on one-on-one, reach out to us. When you registered, you have our contacts. We'll be able to get back to you. You'll have this presentation sent to you if you registered, because we would like to be a group that shares information, shares thought leadership, and look forward to see. So thank you so much, Uganda group. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, panels, for being there. And from us is thank you, God bless you, and have a good rest of the day as we continue. I think